Primetime local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Local News. 5 Saskatchewan residents who tested positive for COVID-19 have died. One of those was a person in the 80-plus age category in our Northwest zone. There are 159 new cases, 24 in our zone. 3,850 cases are considered active, with 463 in the Northwest. 125 people are in hospital, with 4 of those in our zone. 21 people are in intensive care, including 1 in the Northwest. 249 more people have recovered. After a busy year at City Hall that included a municipal election, Eric Bay sits down with Lloydminster Mayor Gerald Albers to discuss 2020 and what's next for City Council.
I'm joined now by Lloydminster Mayor Gerald Albers. Mayor, thank you for taking the time here today. And obviously, it's been a very busy year here in the city with an election and now most recently the budget. Just how hard was it to craft a budget during these circumstances?
You know, administration has been working on that budget for some time. Certainly, it's been a process, and every budget's a process. But you know, we've seen some changes in the financial planning and the programming used at the city, so that helped a little bit, getting managers up to speed on that program, getting their engagement, having them build a budget that they're very proud of and can support. Also looking at the long term. We've also went to that 5-year, looking at some 5-year budgeting and 10-year budgeting for capital. So getting them thinking about that, which is very critical on the administrative side, and this has all been led by the city manager. Then they brought it together, built business cases to support those budget items, and presented it first to the administrative team through our executive administrative portion of the team. Then that's where they did some cutting, as they say in the production world. I understand you've used those kind of terms. And they brought it forward to council before the election for the first presentation, saying this is what we're looking at. You know, I can say it's a no-frills budget because we're paving roads, we're putting water and sewer in the ground, we're fixing storm water, we're taking advantage of federal and provincial monies that come forward, especially with COVID, and put them to use, which were unplanned and had to be unplanned work. So the work that's going on, as an example, on 44th Street is now going to happen, but that was in the long-term plan, but it wasn't budgeted money for next year, but now it is, as you can appreciate. So it's been challenging. COVID has thrown us all for a little bit of a loop, to say the least. Planning and understanding the value and the need, how do we staff accordingly, because next week if the rules change again, we need less staff, hours are cut back, those kind of things. Administration took that into account as best as they could going forward for the next budget, and that's where we arrived at today.
Now within that budget, one of many buildings that is in need of updating is the fire hall. Just where are we at with the fire hall currently, and what is the timeline here in the near future?
Well, the timeline is for construction to start early in the spring of 2021. From that perspective, I don't have an end date yet, and we're just moving through that. Another portion of the construction process was awarded just the other day at council through the construction management process. So the construction management team that was hired by the city through contract will then work with the architect, work with our city team to basically finish off the architectural work and design and say this is what needs to be moved, because you physically can't put a pipe through a piece of steel as an example, if that's what's used for construction or things like that. So that's going to happen, and we'll start to see dust fly in the spring in 2021 at the fire hall. We'll see dust flying out at the wastewater treatment plant in the spring of 2021, and you'll see dust flying on 44th Street. So there's a fair amount of dust to fly in the new year.
And as I mentioned, a busy year here with that election wrapping up in November, and 5 of 6 councillors returning with some previous council experience. Just what are your thoughts here as we move forward with this council over the next 4 years?
I was very fortunate to be acclaimed. I appreciate the 6 councillors that were elected. We mentioned 5 with experience, absolutely. Councillor Marin is getting up to speed rather quickly, as you can appreciate, being elected to her first term on council. I think that we've, as a council, understand economic development was very clearly discussed throughout the election, and it's on our minds. It's been on our minds, and we'll just continue to build on that. And one of the things I've learned about economic development is we simply just don't go out and call on a customer of a new business to come to town, and they say, I like your idea. Yeah, we're coming next week. Or as sometimes business is done, you can do it in one day. This is a long-term approach to economic development, letting people know we exist, especially when we're looking at the chains that we see today in our community for businesses, restaurants, hotels. Those are long-term plans. Those just don't hatch overnight. So that's going to be something that we're going to continue to work with very closely with our economic development team as we continue to build with the community that's here, because we want to enhance the businesses that are here. We want to grow those businesses. We also want to attract new business, because new business brings more business. So it's the long-term approach from that perspective. The next 4 years, we're going to see challenging with funding from the provinces in the way of revenue sharing and their funding formulas that they have. I'm not kidding anyone, and I think everybody knows that Alberta and Saskatchewan are facing relatively tough times because of the resource industry, the challenges that they're experiencing. So we will face those items head on with the provinces, working with them, but also conveying with them that we maintain 60% of the infrastructure in this country. And if you don't have good water and good sewer and good roads in Lloydminster, people have a hard time getting to work, and there's other challenges that come with it. So we'll continue to, I guess, argue and make our point for infrastructure support, because that is critical. And it's either that or the taxpayers are going to pick up more of that infrastructure cost, because, we all know that the water and sewer lines are fine until something breaks.
And my last question here, as we wrap up 2020 and move into 2021, what is Council's priority and first step here in the new year?
I think that you're going to see a very similar direction from Council. Administration is we're kicking off, and it was in the budget for 2021. It happened in 2020. We saw the lean program used at the city to start to evaluate some of the work that's done on the administrative side and saying, can we reduce, as we've heard from the governments, red tape reduction? So processes and procedures, if there's duplication and things like that. And we hear from people all the time that, can it be made simpler? And I think that there's an opportunity for that to be looked at and explored. That's going to happen in 2021. We're going to be talking about a new strategic plan. We've got one. Do we continue on, make some adjustments to it? Because the wastewater treatment plant was one of the first major items on that 4 years ago. We have the funding. We have progress being made towards building it. So as a strategic plan, I think that one can come off, and we can look at for something different if that's what Council chooses, or we'll start and build a new one from that perspective based on coming out of COVID. I hope that's the plan. And I think that's the other item, is we've got a lot of things to happen with COVID in 2021, and I hope that we see a lot more sunshine than we do cloud.
All right, Mayor, always appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now we're Connor and Shannon will take a look at your weather forecast.
All right, thanks a lot, Jasmine. Looking right now, -8 right now is what we're sitting at right now for our temperatures. And of course, we did have a fairly chillier morning, as we did see the frost on our windshields this morning. But with that wind chill right now, it feels a little bit more so like -14. We are going to warm up, as of course tomorrow is Christmas Eve. So as we take a look in our weather forecast and around the region here, -7 we see in Vermilion, -10s in Marwayne, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, and Pierceland as well. -8 up in Lac La Biche, with -3 out west in Edmonton, a little bit warmer there. -8 for Wainwright as well. And then we also see -8 in Macklin, with -13 in North Battleford, and then we see -11s in Maidstone, St. Walburg, and then we see -17 up in Isle of Cross. Now taking a look here at the satellite radar map, not a lot of activity for in the mid-afternoon, but of course the evening it could pick up a little bit, because Edmonton is expected some snowfall, and we are expecting a chance of some of those flurries coming in our way here into tonight, as well as we'll see some of that snow up in the Cold Lake areas as well. So there's a good chance of some flurries for tonight, but the majority of it is going to be in Edmonton. It is going to be in a sense where we won't see it around till like that 8 or 9 o'clock range there, and it will be kind of passing by through our area here. But taking a look at North Battleford, -14 overnight, with a little bit clearer skies going into tomorrow for Christmas Eve for them, 0 degrees with a little bit of clouds and some sun. And then as we look into Cold Lake, -11 overnight tonight with some clouds, going into 3 degrees tomorrow with some sun and cloud mixes as well. And then for us here in Lloydminster, -11 overnight with some cloud coverage, going into +2 tomorrow, what we could expect for our daytime high, of course, as we head into Christmas Eve here. With that wind, it could feel a little bit cooler, like -11 as we head into Christmas Day on Friday. We are going to have a little bit more sun on the forecast here, -5 expected throughout the day with mostly sun and a few clouds. And then we look on Saturday, we get gradually cloudier there with that daytime high of -11. And with that added wind chill, it could feel a little bit colder at -21. That's a first look at your weather forecast. We'll have more primetime local news coming up after the break.
Welcome back. Last month, police in Saskatchewan were on the lookout for drivers with suspended licenses and unregistered vehicles. Jace Mackey has more on what they found.
I'm joined today with Tyler McMurtry from SGI. Tyler, thanks again, as always, for talking with us today.
Great to be here.
So in November, police in Saskatchewan were on the lookout for suspended licenses and unregistered vehicles as part of the SGI's traffic safety spotlight. First of all, what did police in Saskatchewan find?
Last month, police in Saskatchewan caught 341 people driving while suspended, and also another 558 tickets were issued for people who were driving without a valid registration on their vehicle or trailer. And in addition to that, there were more than 300 tickets issued related to driver's licenses, either people not having a valid driver's license or people driving like a suspended driver driving without with a supervising driver, or other manners of not obeying their license restrictions or endorsements.
And last time we spoke in advance of this traffic safety spotlight, we kind of talked a little bit about kind of some of the reasons why it's not a good thing to be driving with a suspended license or unregistered vehicle. But again, can you just kind of go over some of the main reasons why this is something that SGI is wanting to shed a light on?
Sure. I mean, first of all, it's against the law. If you're suspended from driving, you've been ordered to not drive, and so if you're doing that, you're contravening those orders. People don't get suspended for no reasons. Oftentimes, there are traffic safety issues at play there, whether the suspension is related to impaired driving or other traffic issues that you've caused. There may also be a medical issue at play. There are medical suspensions from driving, which means that a medical professional has told you that your condition does limit your ability to operate that vehicle safely. And sometimes those are temporary, sometimes they're longer term, but it's something that everybody needs to pay attention to. The other issue that we were highlighting, of course, is unregistered vehicles. So if you're driving an unregistered vehicle, it basically means you're driving without insurance. And that's a problem, especially if you get into a collision that you cause. You could be personally on the hook for thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars as a result of not having insurance coverage. And unfortunately, we do see several hundred claims denied every year as a result of people driving while they are uninsured. And that's a financial hole that nobody wants to find themselves in.
And when I was looking through the release, also, there was a breakdown of some of the other offenses that people were ticketed for during the past month. And what really stood out to me was there was close to 4,000 tickets issued for speeding or aggressive driving. Is that on par? Is it usually that's kind of the big ticket item? And is that concerning?
Well, yeah, like speeding tickets are the most commonly issued traffic infraction that we see, and those numbers that we see every month can range from 3,000, 3,500 to upwards of 8,000 per month. Now, what we saw in November is we saw the start of sort of the winter slowdown, and when the winter conditions hit, that naturally forces people to reduce their speed, and so we did see that number being much lower than the few months that we've seen prior. But you'll recall that in November, winter came a bit early, so that might be behind that, and we see those speeding numbers drop a bit over the winter months. Now, what we want to emphasize, though, is it's not just about the posted speed limit when you're talking about winter driving. Sometimes you have to drive slower and much slower than the speed limit if the conditions call for that. And in fact, today we're seeing a blast of winter weather hitting much of southern Saskatchewan, and that's going to mean people are driving slower, and that's appropriate for the conditions.
And what are police in Saskatchewan focusing on for the traffic safety spotlight in December?
So for December, we're talking about impaired driving, which we do every month. It's part of our holiday tradition. with SGI and law enforcement across the province. Now, of course, this Christmas is going to look a little different. People will not be gathering in parties to the extent that they normally will be. Family gatherings will be smaller or non-existent, in line with the public health recommendations. But we still know that people do consume impairing substances during this time of year, as they do throughout the year. And we want them to realize that the police enforcement of impaired driving, that's not changing, even if a lot of other things are changing this time of year. For this particular year in 2020, the new normal that we're all experiencing. So we want people to understand that they're still going to see those high visibility check stops. Police are still going to be engaging in other types of enforcement activities designed to catch impaired drivers. So if you are out of your home at any point during this holiday season and you are impaired, you need to find a safe way home. And that doesn't involve getting behind the wheel yourself. Either call a sober friend or family member, or avail yourself of any of the other options that you have, whatever is available in your community, whether it's taxi, bus, rideshare, or there's always staying the night as well, if that's an option available to you if you're at somebody's house.
All right, Tyler McMurtry from SGI, thanks again for taking some time to talk with us today.
Hey, and all the best over the holiday season to you, Jace, and to all of your viewers as well.
Now here are your stock market prices for today.
Today's oil prices are brought to you by First General Services.
The 2019-20 season may not have been the best for the Lloydminster Bobcats, posting a record of 11-41-6, but it did see growth. The Bobcats improved over the past year by 2 wins and 8 points in the standings, plus saw development off the ice. Our Evan Kenny chatted with the Bobcats head coach and general manager to get the inside scoop on it all.
Well, I'm pleased to be joined now by the Lloydminster Bobcats head coach and general manager, Nigel Dubé. Nigel, thank you for taking this time and sort of wrapping up the year with me. I guess first things first, Nigel, just tell me some general thoughts on 2020, the on-ice play as a whole.
Well, I think you look back at, right at the end of our regular season last year, and with so many young guys and so many new bodies throughout that last season that, it took a lot of time to gel and get things connecting and guys used to junior hockey and all those kind of things. And I thought our February, even statistically, was our best month of all. And, for our guys to go into the off season with the core group that we knew we were going to bring back, to experience that at the end, and then also realize what we had coming back. And, through the 2020 with recruiting being put on hold and all those kind of things as far as traveling and seeing guys, I liked what our staff was able to do through the off season to bring in the players that we did to build onto that core group. And then, I thought that we took off where we left off, and that core was back, good leadership, and I thought that was producing on the ice as well and setting things up nicely here for what the season 2020-21 season would be.
Now, you mentioned it, Nigel, having those 14 guys returning rather than just 2 guys that returned the previous year. I mean, how much nicer was it going through all of this with a group of guys that are familiar with each other?
Yeah, well, I think it was huge. And even, away from the on-ice side of things, we look at it, a year ago, you're teaching everybody where the mop pail is, where the brooms are, and where to put the trunk on the bus, and all those different factors that go into it that I wouldn't say they're distractions, but they're teachable moments that you're putting a lot of focus onto those different areas. And, we kind of always joke about how many people had to use the GPS to find the performance center, and then from the performance center to the rink. Then you have that where you come back with a group of guys, a collective group of guys that are able to help out the new guys. And we brought in players that had played with our guys before that knew each other, and you have those pre-existing relationships already built. So it's more of a welcoming atmosphere into the room. Plus, you have some more veteran to junior hockey experience guys come into the fold too as well, and that adds to it. So I think those are big parts of a second year, of building on the foundation that we talked about so much in the first year, and taking those steps. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're on hold, from what the product could be or should be, and we'll see what happens again.
Now, in the 2019-20 season, the Lloydminster Bobcats were one of only 2 teams across Canada to beat 2 separate number 1 ranked teams in the nation. Now, Nigel, that's got to feel pretty good for the guys.
Well, I think, we beat them again in the second half of the year there when we were playing some pretty good hockey. And with that group that we had last year, I think it was 27 one-goal games or something between that and empty net goals. And so again, experiencing the closeness and sometimes you look at it as a group of a lot of guys maybe would be checked out for those games. Hey, we're playing the number 1 team in Canada that's only lost a couple games this year and all those kind of things. And our young leadership group obviously had our players ready to go and looking at the challenge ahead that they've seen as something that they want to take on. I think to mentally engage in that and the empowerment you can have and stepping up to that big game and playing like they did, I think is a huge part of it. So it's a unique thing. I thought that our group did a good job to that, and I think it's still something that our group now can look at and what many of them experience and the hype around it.
Now, Nigel, a lot of the time when we do talk, you talk about, not just building better hockey players, but building better people and just the community involvement that your team does do. How important is this, and just how important is it to continue as the years go along?
Well, without community, junior hockey doesn't exist, and that's not only in Lloydminster, that's across the map, whether you're in Canada, United States. It ultimately it takes the community to keep junior hockey alive. And I think, again, for our guys to experience, to be able to be a role model in the community, whether it's in a school, whether it's in a group setting, or just walking down the road and having an impact on any youth in the community is huge. And our organization, that's one of our core values. Leading up to Christmas here, even during COVID, our group and our staff, an excellent job by Brady, Mallory, and Carmen to come up with the idea of creating curbside collectibles and doing non-perishable food items for families that are in need. Not only speaks to the group of young men that we have in the dressing room that'll do anything for the community and are proud to call Lloydminster home, but the staff that we've assembled here over the last couple of years that are proud to call Lloydminster home and will do anything for this community.
Well, Nigel, final question before we let you go here. A lot of different people have New Year's resolutions. Are there any New Year's resolutions coming from the team?
Well, I think any hockey fan wants to get hockey back going. So we'll look at it as 2021 an opportunity if we can get back on the ice, when we get back on the ice. At the end of the day, it's almost you just got to live every day to your fullest. That was the mindset that we went into, in August of every day that we get, we have to enjoy, we have to make the most out of it. And I think every day that goes by through this pandemic and the challenges that people are experiencing, and whether it be on the ice, at their home, or in a business setting, that, we have to appreciate that we can stay healthy if we're healthy. To stay healthy, to enjoy the highs, to enjoy the lows, to learn from them, and the time we have to truly appreciate it. I think that's what 2020 as a whole has taught everybody.
Well, Nigel, thank you very much for taking this time, and hopefully we will see yourself behind the bench and the Bobcats on the ice here shortly.
Now our Connor Chan will take a look at your weather forecast.
All right, thanks a lot, Jasmine. Looking at temperatures right now, still around that -8 mark right now. And as we look ahead out west, we know Edmonton is going to get some snow this evening. And we look into further west, as I mentioned there. Edson at 0 right now, -10 up down in Red Deer, -5 in Athabasca right now, with -2 for Whitecourt, -5 also in Rocky Mountain House, and then -6 we see out in Jasper as we take a look into Saskatchewan right now. -12 in Saskatoon with -15 in Prince Albert, and -16 in Melfort with -14 in Meadow Lake, and then we see -13 degrees degrees in North Battleford. Up north, it still continues to be fairly colder as we see a little bit more -30 temperatures than what we saw the last few days there. We see -16 in La Loche and Buffalo Narrows to start off here, -26 for L'Orange and in Flin Flon. Then we look up at Stony Rapids at -33, Wollaston Lake at -31, and then we see -32 in South End. Taking a look up in Uranium City, sitting at -25, so it's not as in the -30s as it was yesterday. Taking a look here in northern Alberta, a little bit warmer-ish compared to northern Saskatchewan, -12 in Fort McMurray, -17 in Fort Chipewyan and High Level, 2 degrees in Peace River, 3 in Grand Prairie, and then we see -6 degrees in Slave Lake. Now taking a look here at southern Saskatchewan and southern Alberta, -2 for Lethbridge, -3 in Medicine Hat, and we'll have some nice temperatures there in Calgary at +2 right now, with Coronation at -10. Of course, there are still a lot of those areas in southern Alberta and Saskatchewan still recovering from the massive snowfall warnings they had yesterday. Of course, we did see lots of snow in those southern parts of the country. -8 in Banff right now. We look at southern Saskatchewan right now, -12 we see in Kindersley and Moose Jaw, -10 in Regina, -8 in Swift Current. Then we see -15 all the way down there in Estevan, and -19 degrees in Yorkton currently. Taking a look here at the national temperatures, -20 in Winnipeg, -9 in Quebec City. Lots of cloud coverage throughout the eastern provinces here. 4 degrees in Toronto, 1 degree in St. John's, and we see -5 degrees in Halifax right now. Taking a look out west now, of course, there's lots of cloud coverage there in that Edmonton area. 4 in Vancouver, -21 up in Yellowknife, and then we see -1 in Whitehorse right now with some scattered flurries in both those northern provinces there. Now take a look at what we could see for tomorrow on Christmas Eve. A little bit warmer. We'll see some positive temperatures here. We'll see 2 degrees, pretty common around our area, like areas like Lloydminster, Macklin, Maidstone, and as well as in Bonnyville. We'll see 3 degrees in Cold Lake and Pierceland and Lac La Biche tomorrow, 5 degrees in Vegreville with 2 degrees in Edmonton, 0 in North Battleford for tomorrow with 2 degrees. Also, we'll see in Meadow Lake and Green Lake as well. Now taking a look here at the next couple of days here. Christmas Day, -5 with the daytime high there to start there. A little bit more sunshine expected because we're going to get a little bit more cloudier, on Saturday at -11 there. -13 there we'll see on Sunday, and also a slight over chance that we could see some snow there on Monday at -12 with a 46% chance that we could see some snow there. And then -8 on Tuesdays. We'll have clear skies expected there, and then -9 with cloud coverage on Wednesday. That's a look at your weather for now. We'll have more primetime local news coming up after the break.
Joined once again today by our friend Stephanie Dobson. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator here in Lloydminster, and we've been doing a series talking about separating and divorce, trying to help people find their way, negotiating through the process, everything that they need to do. So Stephanie, welcome back to the show. Thank you for speaking with us.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, as always.
Now today, Stephanie, we're going to be talking about something that some people are good at and some are not so good at, and that is technology and how you can use it to your benefit when it comes to separation and divorce. So what are some of the ways that parents who are either separating or divorced or in the midst of all this can actually use technology to help get through this process?
So the first thing I want to focus on is the thing that we didn't have time for in our communication segment. So I wanted to talk to you about communication apps, so co-parenting apps. If you do a Google search, what you'll find is a whole ton of different apps that are out there. Some are free, some are paid, but in essence, they're a way to compartmentalize your communication with your co-parent. And there's so many different features, and you'll have to just find the one that's right for you. So I just wanted to focus on a few features just to give you an example. So most of them have a shared calendar section and a way to track expenses and reimbursement for child support purposes and messaging. But they also have things like journaling. You can send pictures back and forth. Even kids are able to communicate with the parent when they're not with the parent. They're able to communicate with them through these apps. So there's a whole host of advantages. The other thing is to keep your communication out of your text message feed or your email feed. And so you know that all of your communication with your co-parent will be going through this app. And it's a great way to just sort of segregate all of the communication to keep it nice and organized.
Now, Stephanie, there are people who are just not the greatest with technology, and I know these apps are very helpful, but what do you recommend if they're not so great at working around these types of things?
So at the very least, I would recommend some kind of a shared calendar. And there's tons of ways that you can do this. Because today we're talking about technology, so even at its very basic level, most people have some kind of a free email service. So whether it's Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo or something like that, and most of those services have a calendar attached to it. And most of the time, you can actually add a segregated calendar. So if you add a calendar, say called Kids Calendar, and you can share that on an editable basis with the other parent, and both of you are able to add in things that would affect the kids. So, for example, if you find out about a birthday party or hot lunch or different various sporting activities or changes to schedules or special occasions or that sort of thing. So at the very least, getting a shared calendar is really helpful. Now, if you're not wanting to get one on the electronic basis, of course, you can always do the old, print out a calendar and have the same calendar photocopied on both people's fridges. But the shared calendar on the email service is really nice because it's free and it's usually included and it's really easy to use.
So how can parents use technology to keep on top of what their kids are doing, and not only through schools but just planning in general?
Mm-hmm. So there's lots of outlets out there, whether it's dentists, doctor's office, chiropractor, schools, where parents can actually log into an online portal, sort of like a client or a patient portal. And so you can actually get information typically directly from those agencies. And so you're not relying, the best thing I can recommend is to try not to rely on the other parent to provide information, but to get it straight from the source. One of the things that I know I implement myself is to have a kid-specific email address. And so, for example, you could have, kids@gmail.com, or, your surname, smithkids@gmail.com, or something like that, where any sporting activities, schools, those kind of things, anyone could, that's the email address that you would give to them, and that can actually be automatically forwarded to each parent. And so you get the communication directly from the institution or the organization, as opposed to going through each parent, making sure you forward things. And that's where really things get lost in translation, I find, is when you're relying on the other parent to provide the information.
All right, well, Stephanie, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it. And I know that there's so much more we could talk about when it comes to technology. If people do have some questions and they would like to reach out to you, whether it be for divorce-related issues or even just some of the things that we've spoken about today, what's the best way to do that?
Mm-hmm. So they can go on our website. So there's a contact form on each page of our website, but also specifically under the TV series page, there's a great way for you to reach out to us and even suggest to us various topics, and then we can use that for our next segment. So henkadivorce.ca.
All right, Stephanie. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We wish you a Merry Christmas, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, you too.
the CEO of the Lloydminster Interval Home Society. Now, obviously, this year has been different than years past, but what has been some highlights for the Interval Home Society this year?
Wow, some highlights. Certainly 2020 has been an interesting year for the Interval Home Society, and the rest of the world. The highlights really have been, we've had really a positive highlight to talk about, which would be the expansion of our emergency shelter. We were able to complete that renovation this summer. So that was certainly good news for us. We expanded from 21 beds to 33 beds by renovating the old administration offices, which are now located in our admin building, which is attached to LCYC. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to open those beds to 100% capacity because of COVID. And that has been our whole year, unfortunately, dealing with the realities of COVID-19 and how that has impacted everything that we do at the society.
What has been some changes that the Interval Home Society has had to make throughout the pandemic?
Oh my goodness. We've changed. There hasn't been an area of the society that hasn't been changed. Certainly our shelter, our residential programming, so our emergency shelter and our transitional housing has remained open. So that hasn't changed, but how we operate has changed in that our already very stringent and strict sanitary and occupational health and safety requirements have increased greatly to make sure that we're keeping our staff and our clients safe. I mean, that's the utmost importance. So we've really had to change how we do what we do in our residential programs. But thankfully, we're an essential service. So we're thankful that we're able to remain open for people who need us, but do that in a safe and efficient manner still. Hasn't been without its challenges, of course, but we've been able to stay the course and remain open in those two programs. The youth center we had to close kind of in the immediate aftermath of COVID, but we were able to open back up when the schools opened up again. We've had to adapt that programming as well as our community programming to be able to go online. So we had a fairly quick turnaround time of taking all of our programming that we do in group or one-on-one in a face-to-face format and roll it into online. So our staff have been amazing at being able to take that and with very little technical knowledge, so to speak. I mean, we know how to run email and Teams and, you know, those basic tools, but really to efficiently and meaningfully load and adapt our programming to online format has been a learning experience. Back to the youth center, I mean, we did remain open, or we opened up again, but we did have to cut our capacity, which left some challenges for youth. We saw a lot more closed doors, or what we call, we have to kind of close the doors to any more youth coming in for the evening. So we've had to do a lot more of that. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but one of the cool things that we did at LCYC, which you may or may not have heard me talk about before, but I'm sure some of the community members have heard about dinner time, which we're looking at rolling out again here, which was kind of the curbside meal delivery service that we provided to folks, some of our youth and their families. So that was pretty neat. Yeah.
And how has the support been from the community this year?
Yeah, it's been wonderful. I mean, support has transitioned, I would say. Of course, we have our biggest fundraiser, which is for the Interval store. So one of the challenges we had there was we had to close. But I have to say, you know, when we were able to open back up, our customers came back and our community came back full throttle, and so much so that we were able to open Thriftmas on 50th, which is the Christmas store downtown, which you know, resulted really from an issue that we were seeing in that, you know, our donations come in from community. Our community supports us greatly with the donations of clothing, textiles, you know, household goods, pretty much anything that you could think of, we've had donated. But because of the quarantine and the lack of us to engage a full volunteer staff because of social distancing requirements, it meant a backup of donations and lack of space. So, you know, it was a challenge, but we saw it as a challenge that we could find a unique solution to, and there came Thriftmas on 50th, where we unpacked, I don't know how many years of Christmas donations and put them into a totally different store, and it's been received so well from the community. You know, people maybe aren't able to donate monetarily like they were previously, but people are still coming to us and asking how they can help. And you know, that's the thing, that when we take the time to really slow down and focus on the positives, that's what we notice, is that, yeah, times are tough right now, and it is challenging for folks. I don't know one person that I've talked to in the last I don't know, few weeks that hasn't told me how, stressed or challenged they are and how tired they are. But the community is still strong, and they still have full hearts and are still willing to help. So we're certainly thankful for that.
And this year, the Interval Home celebrated 40 years in the community. And this year, it has been tougher, like we've mentioned. So being able to offer help for this many years in this area, and just again this year, is something that the Interval Home must be proud that they can be a shoulder to lean on for the community members.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. It feels like that kind of got lost. That 40-year celebration. I mean, we had an actual party kind of event planned. We were, planning last year at this time, and unfortunately things didn't happen. So yeah, it's kind of got lost, like I said, in all of the rigmarole with dealing with COVID. So thanks again for bringing that up. It is quite an accomplishment. 40 years in a community, dealing with the community's most vulnerable population. We, of course, wish that we didn't have to exist. We would love to work ourselves out of a job, and that's ultimately our ultimate dream goal, is to eradicate family violence and violence in general, in interpersonal relationships, and to work ourselves out of a job. But we're here in the meantime to celebrate that 40 years has gone by, that we've been able to maintain our services to the community, and that we remain part of the vital fabric of the community.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Angela.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, taking one last look here at your weather forecast. 2 degrees on Thursday with -5 here on Fridays. We're going to get a little bit of sun on Friday there on Christmas Day. -11 on Saturday with -13 on Sundays. We're going to have a few days of some cloud coverage, increasing a bit heading into Monday at -12 there. And as we look ahead into Tuesday, clear skies there at -8. And then as we look into Wednesday, -6, we'll see the day with some cloud coverage. There is a possibility we could see some flurries tonight as we look at our averages. -9 for our average daytime high, and average -19 for our daytime low.
Thank you for joining us on Primetime Local News. Have a great night.